Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Hurricane Matthew is still impacting the southeast. Some rivers crested just this weekend, and parts of North Carolina are still underwater. But some U.S. communities hit again and again find they're in too deep to think about surviving in the long term. One of them is an Indian tribe in Louisiana. They're part of a groundbreaking project to relocate together to higher ground at taxpayer expense. Some are calling them the first climate change refugees. But we found that other man-made factors could be largely to blame.
We had chickens, we had pigs, we had cattle.
Albert Nakan has lived here on Isla Jean Charles his whole life, a sliver of an island in the South Louisiana bayou. He's chief of the island's band of Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw Indians, who first settled here in the 1800s. They grew into a fishing community that stayed self-sufficient for a century. But today, the island is literally shrinking down to nothing before their eyes. This used to be land.
This used to be land all along here.
An aerial photo from 1963 shows how much marshland there used to be. By 2008, most all of it had become water as the Gulf of Mexico swallowed up the land. The tribe's plight has been documented in numerous films, including Can't Stop the Water.
When I was growing up over here, a hurricane, we used to ride them out. And we didn't worry about flood. We didn't worry about the wind. But now, as you can see,
the community gets flooded more and more and more often, and its size has shrunk 98% from its original size, and the population has also shrunk along with it because people have gotten tired of living with storms and floods on an annual basis.
Pat Forbes heads up Louisiana's Office of Community Development. He's helped the tribe win a first-of-its-kind federal grant, $48 million tax dollars, to move the last island inhabitants to higher ground, keeping them together as a group, preserving their culture.
The important part of that is that we are moving the community en masse. This hasn't really been done before.
hopefully we bring it back to where our kids and all of the kids that are off the island would reunite and, and they'd have a place to call home together.
Some reporters have dubbed the Indian tribe the first climate change refugees. But with millions of Americans in the same boat, living in coastal areas being drowned by water, spending $48 million on 60 people is bound to raise eyebrows. There are a lot of people in trouble facing similar circumstances, and they may wonder why these people and not them for all this federal money.
Obviously, federal money and all other kinds of money are limited, and so there was a competition, and we won that competition with a project based here.
About 30 miles south is Leeville, a small but once booming seafood industry and oil town, where Don Griffin has co-owned a marina and ice house that's been in business since 1977.
Before, the only time we'd have water was for hurricanes, and now just your regular real high tides that you have a large tidal movement. We got water constantly on the back dock, on the parking lot.
Leeville, too, has dwindled down to a skinny town just a mile long with a handful of year-round residents. But there's no federal relocation project coming to their rescue.
I'm glad that they were able to get help, but I mean, who decides who gets help and who doesn't get help?
Leeville used to be 4 feet higher just 100 years ago.
Wendell Currell manages the area's man-made levee system, including this lock that shelters the town north but puts unlucky Leeville outside the hurricane protection system.
As we look to the south, these people are not under flood protection.
But there's a twist to the story. Currell and many local experts say there are other factors besides climate change to blame for Louisiana's shrinking land. One of the biggest causes, oil companies.
Since 1930, we've lost probably the size of Delaware since 1930. A remarkable land loss.
For decades, the Louisiana fishermen have coexisted with the oil industry, but it turns out the oil company canals dredged for shipping and pipelines washed away protected marshland and brought the water ever closer to residents' doorsteps. Chris Brunet and his family are among the 60 or so tribal residents who live in the remaining homes on Isla Jean Charles, raised on stilts to try to stay above water. How high have you seen the water get here?
About around 4 foot. It's about as high as this, and this is without a hurricane.
It's no longer just the vicious hurricanes that can cause problems. With widening canals dredged by oil companies now in Brunei's backyard, even a strong high tide can flood the neighborhood. One state study found the oil and gas companies are responsible for more than 90% of the island's damage.
Do you see climate change as a bigger factor to the change in your way of life, or the oil companies?
I see the oil company as a bigger factor of the I guess the destruction of our community, and that is because of all the canals they dug out, allowing the salt water to come in a lot faster and go out a lot faster.
So that's not a climate change problem. That part of it is a
that's not a climate change
company
problem.
issue. But it sounds almost as if federal taxpayers are picking up the tab for something the oil companies won't pay for.
I agree with that. The U.S. government is picking up the tab for the oil companies.
Curel argues the oil and gas industry has already paid billions of dollars in federal taxes over the years. Now he says it's time for the community to get some of that federal money back in terms of assistance.
Since 1995, the average is about $6 billion that's come from this little corridor that's going to the federal government, and we've had basically zero of any of that money. So it's not just a one-way street.
Whatever's to blame for the sinking of Isla Jean Charles, the unprecedented project to move the entire town is moving forward. Supporters see it as a pilot program that other doomed coastal communities could follow.
Some people might think $48 million to resettle 60 people is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It would be far less expensive for us to just buy people out and give them each a new home up somewhere that's safe. But again, we lose that resilience that being part of a community brings to a community. And that's the thing that we think, that culture, that's the thing that we can't afford to lose from our coastal communities across Louisiana and around the country.
We didn't create this, but I think that, our federal government ought to be responsible, or the oil companies ought to pitch in as well to help us get out of here. I think the government and whoever created the pipeline canal should put a few pennies to help, I guess, to reunite our community and families as it was when we was living here back in when it first began.
We contacted the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, and they told us the primary cause of coastal erosion is the Mississippi River levees built by the Army Corps of Engineers. A footnote, the money to move the tribe came from leftover Hurricane Sandy funds. Instead of returning it to the Treasury or saving it for the next disaster, the government came up with new ways to spend it.